Okay, so I had a dream last night. I just made a video a couple days ago about entropy. Um, and I woke up. I had a dream last night, and in this dream, I was like kind of rock climbing, sort of. And then I remember like the last the last rock that I touched with my hand on my right side was this. The rock was probably about like that big, right? So I'd say it was probably like right here, like my waist. I was in the middle of my body, and the rock was impressed with the word entropy. So I was like, maybe there's something I'm missing from that word. Maybe I should look it up. So I looked it up, and it says a measure of the unavailable energy in a closed thermodynamic system that is also usually considered to be a measure of the system's disorder, that is a property of the system's state, and that varies directly with the temperature of the system. Broadly, what it means is the degree of disorder or uncertainty in a system, the degradation of the matter and energy in the universe to an ultimate state of inert uniformity, a process of degradation or running down, or a trend to disorder. And then the synonyms were chaos, disorganization, and randomness. What I took from that, the pictures that I was sent in my mind were pictures of other dreams that I have had. I thought about God. I thought about this magical dynamic, a process that we go through to figure things out. And I thought about my own process, and the color of the rock in my dream reminded me of another dream that I had. And it was I was on a mountain, and it was the same color. It reminded me of like Arizona or Sedona. It reminded me of that kind of weather, like a desert. And I remember the rocks, like the mountain started shaking, and it was this like very, very deep bass sound, and it made me like the first inclination I had was God. Like that was the first thing that popped into my head, and this was many, many, many years ago. And it was like so powerful that the words alone could like dissipate me, like dissolute me or something, you know what I mean? Like it was that powerful. I mean, nothing happened to me, but I knew that it was so, so strong, and the weight of that vibration alone was so, so strong, and that was the first thing that popped into my head was God. And I've had other dreams like that where I just knew, like, even in a dream, I knew that that's what it was. I've had, like, I think 3 or 4 dreams like that. One of them had to do with wind. It was like wind and this mist that rolled in. I actually had forgot about that dream up until this morning. And the way the wind was moving, the way that the mist and the dust was moving, it just felt like God, like this. I mean, however we want to describe something that is all that is, and whatever that is, however we want to describe it, that's what it felt like to me. It just felt awesome and powerful, but not wanting to hurt me. It felt extremely, extremely powerful. And then another one was with water, and I was standing, and the room was like, it was like the floor was black and everything around me was black, but then like this window opened up above me, and it was almost like a trap door, like it opened up, and I was watching myself from someone else's point of view. So it's like I'm standing here and I'm watching myself here, and all this water came splashing out of this door, which reminds me of the constellation Pegasus, like that the square. That's what it reminds me of immediately. And it was like this door opened, and the light came down, and then this water, and I'm watching it splash. Like I remember being like this, and the water splashed down on my head and on my body, and that felt like God. And it was my first inclination. I don't really know how else to describe it except that was my first inclination. And this morning I was reminded of it again. So I decided to look much further into this whole entropy thing. And when I actually, wrote down the words of it, it's really crazy. I'm gonna talk about the whole pooping solution again because yes. So I'm outside. The sun's out. I decide to look up entropy. I start reading, my phone, the definition, and I only read the first sentence of that entropy definition, and in one sentence, and like only a couple sips of coffee. Like usually it takes like at least 2 cups of coffee to get things moving, but with just one sentence, it was like as soon as I finished the sentence, this Coca-Cola truck drove by, and it was like, boom, that same bass sound, but not as powerful as the dream. And it was like everything started moving. I immediately had to go to the bathroom. And I know it's really crazy. I'm sorry if that's disgusting or anything like that, but it was like so much weight in that sentence. And it was like, I don't know, like, it makes me think of Genesis, when it talks about God said, "Let there be this and let there be that," and it was like the weight of this guy's words, the weight of this system's, God's words were so truthful and they were so powerful and they had so much weight that things moved. Things moved immediately at the sound of that voice. And so when I read that one sentence and everything moved through my system, I was like, whoa, I really need to look into this because the gravity of those words were so powerful that it immediately moved my system all at once. And then I thought about heaven and earth, and I thought about separatism because I look at the definition of entropy, and it says chaos, disorganization, and randomness. Now I see two different sides of this story. When I think of chaos, I think of quantum physics. I think of things at like an atomic level, even smaller than that. And they talk about possibilities and different particles popping in and out of existence. And we look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, it looks so chaotic. We can't see what's happening. Things are moving so fast that anything's possible, right? Anything's possible. And then I think about the good book, and it talks about like, through God, with God, everything is possible. It's all possibilities. And I'm like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like we're literally in this dimension looking at another dimension and saying that's totally chaotic, that's disorganized, it's completely random, we don't understand what's going on, it doesn't match up with the science of like much larger macroscopic, I don't know if that's a word for it, but like much larger bodies, because we look at space and we see this large methodical movement and we're like, yeah, that makes sense. And then we look at the opposite side of the spectrum. It's something as small as an atom, or smaller than that, and we say the physics don't make sense. But I think, well, my first intuition is like, well, I think these are just different levels of being able to view something, to better understand ourselves and to better understand other systems, just from a different perspective. Because when I think about it, it's like, how confusing must things look maybe to like something that is much smaller, and if we were the same size as that world that we look at and we say it's completely random, maybe it wouldn't look totally random. It would probably I think it would look just like this. So when I look at the definition of this and I see chaos and disorganization, and I'm like, well, maybe from our point of view, maybe it's just our perception of what chaos and disorder looks like. And then another thing that I'm learning as I go about working it out with other people and working it out with one person is like let me see here. I guess I kind of look at it in the same way as we're viewing as we're viewing this chaos and disorganization, it's like when you're around somebody and for some reason you're not getting along, you're not meshing together, and then something doesn't seem right, or you seem like you're on a different wavelength, or for some reason it's not working together. And what I've realized is that it's like I think what it is that it seems chaotic, and then maybe that perception. It seems chaotic. It seems random and disorganized and uncomfortable. Maybe like uncomfortable is a way that I can use to describe it. Is feeling uncomfortable with unpredictability or possibly predictability. It seems to me like all of these things in science that we can look at and we can view as being either chaotic or methodical. I think it's just perception. I think it's really just perception. And like when I think about the whole heaven and earth thing and the possibilities that I see in science, like when I put the science in there and I think about why we think we're separate, it confuses me. I think that's what confuses me the most, because we see chaos and then we see order. But I'm very confused by that. I'm confused by chaos, and I'm confused by the separation of those two things. Like, I know I don't have all the answers, but I know that when I read that, it confuses me. And so then I start questioning why I'm confused, because I know there's something in there that makes sense to me. And maybe it's just the perception or the idea that we think we're separate, that we think we can't do this and we can't do that. But I think one of the biggest things that I'm learning now is that working together is like the number one thing, When I feel like when I'm in a situation and I feel uncomfortable, that's like the feeling we get when we look at chaos theory. When we look at, like atomic structures and something smaller than that, and we get into the land of like total possibility, and it looks chaotic because we can't see and we can't predict what's happening. I think that's like the perception that I'm in when I'm in a situation where I feel like I don't understand what's going on. Probably exactly what I'm doing right now. And excuse me. But I notice that when I do something different, when I start, if for some reason something isn't, you can immediately tell a discord. You can immediately tell with vibes or whatever inclination that you have that something isn't, you notice something. You notice something that sort of like stops the pattern, right? Like say a song and then somebody hits a different key and you're like, oh, what was that? It's a discord. It's immediate discord. But it's like the symphony within people. You can immediately tell when somebody's feeling something different. And it's like when I get myself in a moment like that, and I'm like, okay, well then I start listening even more carefully, and it's like, well, I find that by participating more, by relaxing more about the situation, or just going with it, you know what I mean? Like just letting go of anything, of any like judgment or trying to correct the situation. It's like being a part of the situation. It seems to like produce its own energy to. It's like person-to-person distribution is kind of what it seems. It's like a balance starts happening. Because if you get into an argument and somebody says something hurtful and then the other person says something hurtful, and it's like, either way that the conversation goes, it's like this energy distribution that's literally happening between the two of you. And it's like, I think that's what it is. I feel like there's more that I want to say about that, but I feel like maybe I don't know enough right now. But I guess the main thing that I wanted to talk about was like the science. I think science relaxes people in some respects. I think that by finding the science in something, that literally gives you like this feeling of You know what I mean? Like, oh, well, that's for me. For me, it's like when I find something scientific and I'm like, oh, you know, it's like immediately my brain and my body is like, well, that makes sense. You know what I mean? And then like I see it in my everyday world and I'm like, oh, like, whoa, you know what I mean? So when I looked up entropy and it said disorganization, when I look up, when I know that when I strip everything of its basic part, like elements, when I look at this, and I look at this, and I look at this, and I look at this right here, and I know that science has already shown us that we can break it down and dig and break it down, and it's still the same particles. And I'm like, well, then why would we ever think that we were separate from anything else? Why would we ever even think for a moment that we weren't in heaven, that there was even a separation between heaven and earth, or there was a separation between all there is and us. I think it's just the ability to be able to view that process, to experience that process. And science is it's like knowing. It's like when I read something and I feel it and I'm like it's like an immediate discord of my perception looking at it, and I'm like, as soon as I see something that sounds separate, I immediately feel a discord in me, and instead of, and it's like at first it's almost like a negative feeling, but then I'm like, well, hold on now. This is the best way that I can learn is with the dualities, or with both sides of the spectrum, because then that makes me think. That makes me think about it, and it's like patience and sharing whatever you have, and caring for one another, like no matter what, like no matter what. I think the ability to relate with one another, and no matter what the situation is, and it's like empathy, like that feeling, like even if you didn't go through the same exact thing as that person, it's like the feeling we can recognize that feeling. Like the situation is meant to be listened to, but it's the feeling that you get, that you relate with. I mean, sometimes you've been in the same situation, but the feeling, for sure. Yeah, I wrote down patience, sharing, caring, loving the process that we go through to love one another through thick and thin, no matter what. That's what I wrote down. It's like this, no matter what situation, no matter what, it's like to just love the process and love one another. Like, you know, listening and making each other happy. Like, I think listening and making each other happy, like, that seems to be a very, very big thing. And I know it sounds simple. I know it sounds totally simple and obvious, but, you know, yeah, I think maybe it is just that simple. And instead of being all, I know I end up getting a little complicated sometimes, but, you know, it's science. I love science. Look at this. Now I don't even know what to say. I feel like I just contradicted myself. Well, this is the process. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's all I had to say for now. Thanks for watching.